month for yes.
Welcome to Spooky Season Shorts with Knock Once for Yes. I'm Lil.
And I'm Fitz, and this is week 4 of our 2025 Halloween countdown. That means there's less than a week to go until our favourite day of the year.
And this will be our final instalment of Spooky Season Shorts this year. But fear not, we still have our full-length Hallowbirthdayween episode to come. And we will be celebrating 9 years on the air with all your Halloween Knock Once for Yes favourites, stories, a paranormal postcard, and, of course, a bit of seasonal silliness as Fitz and I compete for who can find the most ridiculous, tangentially ghost-related Halloween news story. I'm feeling quite confident about mine. How are you feeling?
Oh, I've had a little bit of a wobble this year, but we'll get into that in the Hallowbirthdayween episode.
But you feeling like you're going to take the prize this year?
I don't know. Every time I'm really confident, you sin shit. So I'm not going to say that I'm going to win this one, because the minute I say I'm going to do well, you'll come up with something way better.
Well, there's still time yet.
One more thing before we get stuck into today's stories, and that is that we want to say a huge thank you to everyone who responded to our request and popped over to YouTube to leave a comment on the episode there. Thank you so much. You're doing us a huge favour, increasing our visibility and hopefully getting this show seen by more people who may have their own ghost stories to share, because we would love to do this Halloween countdown again next year. And to do that, we will of course need more people sharing their true paranormal experiences.
But also, it's just been so lovely seeing your comments. There aren't really places to leave comments on most podcast platforms, and being an audio-only podcast, YouTube understandably isn't really our main platform, which is fine. But it's just been so amazing seeing your comments pop up over there. It's not something we typically get to experience. So please do keep it going. We love it. It means so much to us.
And also a special thank you to Alan, who's been
Alan.
a stalwart supporter on YouTube for a long time and whose comments we always look forward to. They always make our day. You are really appreciated, and I hope the trawling through the attic for the 40 times back copies is still going strong. We're actually kind of jealous.
We're kind of jealous, yeah. It sounds like such an amazing family activity.
Yeah, I'm just imagining you all sat around the fire, mugs of cocoa and reading spooky things in 14 times. It sounds amazing.
It really does. I want to join in. But now, without further ado, let's have some ghost stories. And this first one is from Vic.
My father and his parents and siblings emigrated to New Zealand from the UK in the 70s. My father met my mother pretty much straight away. They married and had me. One night, when I was a baby, my parents and their friends decided to bring out a Ouija board and muck around with it. They were attempting to contact their friend's grandmother who had just passed, but instead, my uncle, my mother's brother, who had died in a car accident a few months earlier, made himself known. My mother is very sure it was him, and not someone playing a trick, as he referenced some personal stories that only the two of them were privy to. They were chatting away, and my uncle suddenly spells out, "Victoria is Anna. Victoria is my name." My mother was very confused by this and looked at my father, who had apparently gone completely white. When questioned, he told her about his Anna. When my father was about 17, he joined the Air Force in the UK. In the evenings, he and his friends would sometimes bring out a Ouija board and muck around with it. They started making regular contact with a woman called, you guessed it, Anna. Needless to say, my parents and their friends were all completely creeped out and put the board away. A lot of Anna's story has been lost to time, but what I know is that she was called Anna, she was the wife of a shopkeeper, she died in childbirth, and she lived in Tudor times. One last weird detail. My mother didn't tell me this story until I was probably about 18. Now, I've always been a history buff, but from the time I was about 8 until I finished school at 17, I was obsessed with one particular period of history. You guessed it, the Tudor period. Oh, and one lovely detail. When my mother asked my uncle if he was happy wherever he was, he replied, "The happiest I've ever been." I find that very comforting.
And thank you so much to Vic for sharing that incredible story with us. Oh, that was so lovely. The happiest I've ever been. That actually makes me tear up a little bit.
Yeah, it just goes to show that we say this a lot, actually, that the supernatural doesn't have to be scary.
No.
Like, ghost stories don't have to be terrifying. They can just be really touching.
And really profound.
Indeed. And this story, I love it. It's got a little bit of everything. It's got the unsettling Ouija board story. It's got possible, like, past life reincarnation thing. And obviously the very sweet ending. Yeah, I really love this one. It's fantastic.
So yeah, and is it a past life reincarnation story as well? Like, we really need to dig into this. We've been talking about it for a while. Maybe doing like a special episode on past lives, because you've actually got a family story that's quite interesting. Well, a family friend story that's quite interesting. And there are some really, really incredible, fascinating stories out there. I think we're going to have to do a deep dive into it at some point. And I was really interested about the Tudor connection. I mean, obviously being a history nerd, I would be. But well, the thing that stood out to me was the name Anna. Now, partly, this is because of all the research we did on the famous Ouija board conversation that took place at the Ferryboat Inn. Some of you may have heard that episode, Ferryboat Inn in St Ives, during which investigators supposedly had a conversation with an Anglo-Saxon girl. And through the Ouija board, they got the name Juliet Tuesley. Now, this Ouija board session spawned basically an entire legend, a whole ghost story about this Saxon girl named Juliet. But when the investigators looked into it, Juliet was not a Saxon name at all. It was basically unknown to us until Shakespeare. Shakespeare popularised it. No one in Saxon Britain was called Juliet. And ever since we dug through all of that, the dating of names has always been a bit more on my radar. But Anna, of course, like there are lots of famous Annes in Tudor times. So immediately that's ringing true, which is really exciting. Notably, of course, we had Anne Boleyn and Anne of Cleves, both, unfortunately for them, wives of Henry VIII.
Isn't Anne Boleyn like the one that haunts almost every property in the UK?
I think she's one of the most prolific ghosts in England, yeah. Norfolk girl, in fact, not too far from us, Blickling Hall. So Anne's, we know, but Anna isn't quite as common as Anne for that period of history. So I had a little look to see what the difference was, if there was any difference in terms of the Tudor times. And basically, Anne is just an anglicisation of Anna. And in fact, Anne of Cleves was actually an Anna. And that's even how King Henry addressed her, apparently, as Anna, not Anne. She was born in Dusseldorf, Germany. So her name was really Anna von Clever. And Anne of Cleves was just an anglicisation. And when I say anglicisation, I actually mean it was French. And the English at some point just nicked it because, of course, we've got a lot of French names in England after the Normans came over.
Oh, yeah. They've had quite a strong influence on the language.
Oh, huge. But then so has German language as well, because then we had a Germanic influence. Before that, England and the English language is just a huge cultural, wonderful, delicious melting pot, really, isn't it?
It really is.
And what is it that you always say to your students, Fitz, about the English language in a trench coat in a dark alley?
Yeah, it's like English is 3 languages in a trench coat that sort of stalks other languages and steals grammar from them in a dark alley.
So according to Tudor Bloggers page on the meaning of Tudor names, Anna was a popular name in the Byzantine Empire and was later used to honour St. Anna, Mother of the Virgin Mary. So basically, Anne was the French and then the English version. Anna was the German version. And I just thought it was interesting because I wonder whether there might be a continental connection in there as well. I mean, people from Europe travelled back and forth to England a lot in Tudor times. You know, travel was so, I think it's I think we forget sometimes in history how much people travelled and moved to different countries to work and marry and all sorts of these things. So it's completely possible. The other thing we do have to remember, though, is that in Tudor times, spelling was not standardised.
Oh, no, not at all. Not even people's names.
No.
Like when they repeat them themselves. It's not like people saying, John, how do you write that? Like Shakespeare is very famous for spelling his own surname multiple different ways anytime he signs something.
Absolutely. It's actually really interesting looking through Tudor writing and documents because the spelling is wonderfully creative. A lot of times it's phonetic, and then other times you see the continental influence coming through. You see that kind of Germanic influence or French influence or Latin influence. And it's fascinating. Like even in one letter, the spelling for one word can change multiple times through it. So yeah, so there is absolutely, it could literally just be a non-standardized spelling thing, or it could be a continental connection. Both are very interesting. But anyway, apologies for going off down a rabbit hole. We're and only one story in as well, although it was kind of inevitable. Have you met me? I am Lil, Rabbit Hole Queen. I think I'm going to need to get that on a t-shirt. But anyway, shall we have another story?
I think so, and this one is from Vix, not to be confused with Vic from the last story. And Vix sent us a story that we shared quite some time ago about their haunted Victorian terraced house, and one of the experiences they had there was a mysterious smoke that appeared in their living room. After sharing their story on the show, they remembered another experience they had involving another case of inexplicable smoke. This time a little closer to Coffee HQ, at a pub near Bedford.
This pub was run by my partner's parents, and it was really old, full of history and a lot of ghosts, which the family and customers had experienced. One of these was an old regular who obviously didn't want to leave. It was back in the days that smoking was allowed in pubs, and I had heard that this particular ghost manifested in the form of a cloud of cigarette smoke in his favourite chair. My partner and I were sat in the pub after closing time. It was quite a sunny day, so there were lots of shadows and light patches. I said to him, "Look at how that smoke is just hanging there." And he said it was probably the ghost. As I watched, the smoke swirled and appeared to take the form of a person sitting in the chair. You could see how it sat on the seat and then flowed up the back of the chair. It was really odd. I kept this to myself, as I thought it wasn't really possible for smoke to take a shape, and just thought I was imagining it, as I'd only heard that this ghost appeared as a cloud of smoke. However, after discussing it with my partner's sister, she said, "Did you see it take the shape of a person?" Then I knew I had seen this happen. It was really weird. I wonder if he still appears now, since the smoking ban, or whether he needs some residual smoke to come forwards.
And thank you to Vix for sharing that story. And they did actually mention to us which pub it was, and we've been.
Yeah, they didn't want to share the name just in case the proprietors didn't want that kind of association. Not everybody does, which is understandable. But yeah, we went not that long ago, maybe a couple of years ago in the summer, but obviously we always sit outside now, so we wouldn't have seen this particular chair.
And obviously that was post-smoking ban, but I've been several times with my family
Years ago.
before the smoking ban, like when I was young. And unfortunately I never saw the ghost, although to be honest, this would have been pubs in like the 90s, so probably would have been quite thick with smoke anyway. But the one
Didn't
thing
you say it was always like quite busy when you went? So
Yeah,
you
it was
just
really busy.
probably there would have been somebody in that chair anyway, and you wouldn't have noticed.
Yeah, it was definitely busy. It was quite an odd place, actually. It was like a sort of a local pub, obviously, but it
Village
had
pub, isn't it? Kind
village
of like
pub.
a very countrified one.
Yeah, but it had like a butcher's counter in it, and if you wanted steak, you would go up to the butcher's counter and they would cut the steak exactly the way you wanted it and
Really?
cook it for you. Yeah, it was really good.
So was the butcher's counter only for like the restaurant, or
Yeah.
could you actually just pop to the pub to get your, I don't know, stuff to make your Sunday
I
roast?
don't think you could go and buy it to take away. I think it was
okay.
literally just like you chose something and they cooked it for you.
That's very cool though.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
And it's it's got like a fireplace in it, a really cozy place to sort of snuggle up in winter next to the fire.
Yeah, definitely. It's very traditional pub, very much so. So, yeah, I unfortunately never saw the ghost, and I'm exactly the same. Like, is this a situation where it can't appear anymore because there isn't the smoke to create it? Is maybe the smoke from the fire enough?
Well,
If they have the fire on? Because obviously we went in summer. I don't know if they still have a fire in winter.
no, we only passed through, we went straight onto the garden anyway, so I didn't really notice. But I don't necessarily think that you would require smoke. And I'll tell you why. Partly because of Vix's first story that they sent us, where the phenomenon was just a mysterious smoke appearing out of nowhere.
Yeah.
There was no cause, there was no reason, nothing was creating it. It just appeared. And I have actually experienced that myself in our old haunted house that we shared with other people. We've done a whole episode on it ages ago now. But one of the things I experienced there was one day I was standing in the living room. There was nobody else around. I think I was home alone. I think everybody else was out. They certainly weren't in the downstairs. And I was standing in the living room, and this kind of, I don't really know what shape to describe it as, but this smoke just appeared like a blob of smoke hanging in the air. And I saw it very clearly because it was daytime, so the light was coming through the window and catching it, sort of dancing on the air. And I don't really know. There was no cause. There was no fires. There was nobody smoking. There was no incense burning. There was just nobody cooking. Absolutely nothing was happening. And it just appeared in front of me as I stood there, hung in the air, swirled around a bit, and it was quite dense but small, like compact. It was in a very small area. And then it just kind of popped out of existence and suddenly wasn't there anymore. So there was no trigger for that. It wasn't like there was already smoke in the room and it formed into a shape. It just appeared out of nowhere and then disappeared as quickly as it happened. So from that experience, I would say possibly you wouldn't necessarily need there to be already smoke there. Having said that, though, I think it would be really interesting if anybody ever gets an opportunity to investigate, if they know what we're talking about. I would be so interested to just have some incense or something burning near the chair and just see what happened.
Yeah, definitely.
Just sit and watch
That
it, or
would be
maybe leave
really
a camera on it.
Yeah, I know pubs change hands, so I don't know if your in-laws are still managing the place or whether it's gone on to somebody else. But yeah, I'd definitely be interested to follow that up.
But it sounds like such a cozy ghost as well, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, just somebody that enjoys being somewhere they loved.
Yeah, and why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to sit in your comfy favourite chair in your cozy pub, if it's one of the kind of familiar, comforting places that you just always want to hang out?
I can certainly think of worse places.
Well, thank you again to Vix, and this brings us to our last story for today's episode. This one is from Jan.
It was 2014, and I was working as a domestic at the local hospital. It was a night shift that involved deep cleaning and outpatient clinic. Thankfully, I wasn't alone, as I had one colleague helping me. After we entered the clinic, we locked ourselves in, and it was roughly 1 a.m. We needed to stack up the waiting room chairs in order to clear the area for a floor treatment. As we were doing so, I turned to pick up another chair, and I 100% saw, in the area we hadn't reached yet, an arm laying on an armrest of a chair. It was a tanned hand with a navy blue sleeve. I need to add that the chair was positioned in such a way that if someone was there, I wouldn't have been able to see the whole person unless I entered the area fully. It's hard to describe, but it was a corner. I stood frozen to the spot, and my colleague asked me what on earth was the matter. After I'd composed myself and explained, I took a dozen or so steps into the area. Yes, there was a chair there, but there was no one there, and there wasn't even an armrest on the chair. This was even more baffling, and confirmed something very odd had occurred. We carried on with the job in hand, my colleague refusing to discuss it any further because we had to complete the job, and she, I guess, wanted to somehow deny what I'd seen. I've been at said hospital for 24 years, and am now in another position. I've had a couple of other experiences, but nothing as unexplainable.
Thank you so much to Jan for sending that story in. That's a weird one. Actually, I've just realised it's reminding me of the paranormal postcard story we've got coming up next episode. But anyway, you'll find out about that next in a week or so. But yeah, we've had on this show in previous stories some disembodied body parts.
Yes.
We've had disembodied legs. In fact, we've had a couple of cases of disembodied legs, haven't we?
I've seen some, yeah.
Yeah. But this is a bit different because the only reason this was disembodied was because of the angle they were viewing it from.
Well, it was possible that it wasn't. It was just that they couldn't see the whole thing.
Yeah.
But it may have just been an arm. We don't know.
It may have been a full-bodied apparition if they had been a little bit further around the corner so they could have seen further into the room.
Yeah.
We don't know. So, but as you pointed out, the first time you read this, Fitz pointed out to me that one of the most interesting things was that when they went to check out the chair didn't even have an armrest.
I know. It's so hilarious that this is the thing that really kind of was the spooky bit for me in this, was that the chair was different.
Yeah.
And it's like, for some reason, my brain is like, yeah, just, a sort of a figure sitting in a chair, fine, that's normal. But for the chair to be different feels odd, and I'm not sure why.
No, I get that, because there was a chair there, so it's not like the chair didn't exist. I feel, again, it's going to sound silly, but I feel like it would be less weird if there hadn't been a chair there at all.
Yeah, so it was just
so it was a ghost chair,
and the arm were just the thing that was appearing rather than the figure, and randomly an armrest that didn't exist.
So, but then that leads the question, was the chair they saw the chair that was really there? Were they seeing into a different sliver of time entirely?
Yeah, that's
do you know
really
what I mean?
Interesting. So ghost time slip.
Well, this is it. Different reality. I don't know. Could be any of the above, because in a glance like that, you're not taking any notice of the chair, really, are you?
No.
They're looking at the arm with enough detail to say that it was a tanned hand and the colour of the sleeve, which is a lot of detail.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. It's not, that doesn't speak to me of something that is catching the light or, making the chair look weird because of shadows. That's really detailed.
Yeah, that is quite detailed.
So you're not going to be looking at the chair in that example, are you? You're not going to be taking any notice whether, when you actually go and look at the real chair, whether it was the same thing that you saw.
Yeah, and it kind of makes me wonder how many encounters at hospitals we don't hear about, because this only became important because it was empty. The doors were locked, they were clearing out the room.
Yeah.
But not necessarily just hospitals. In many situations, if you saw a ghost, maybe you didn't realise because it just looked normal.
Well, this is it. So many of the ghosts that I have seen, it's only the situation and the context that has made me realise that they were ghosts. The reason I've realised that they're not real people is because they absolutely should not have been in that place at that time.
Yeah.
And this is another case like that. If you were walking through a hospital not at closing time, when there was all sorts of people around, and you saw an arm in a chair, you would never think twice about it.
Yeah, it wouldn't
You'd
even
never
register.
consider that was odd. It's only because the place was empty and they were doing, it was a deep clean, I think. that it registered as like, well, that should not be there.
No, it's strange. And, hospitals, it's kind of a trope now that hospitals are super haunted. And I
Yeah.
understand why, because of what happens there. People are sick, emotional, they're losing people.
Yeah.
People are literally passing on.
But also they're really liminal places.
Yeah,
in the same way that hotels and, train stations and places like that are really, you don't, well, hopefully you don't stay there long. People are just constantly moving in and out. But I think, as you pointed out, they're places of very high emotion, which I think also does add to liminal spaces. It just adds another element, another layer on top of that. And it is so common, as we've seen in ghost stories for, well, basically centuries, that transient places do just tend to have a higher number of paranormal incidences than anywhere else.
And change, like when you renovate a house, when there's changes happening, like it's all change. It's change. It's so strange.
Interesting that you say about the renovations, because the other scenario I was thinking of that we often hear results in hauntings is when somewhere has been sitting empty for a long time, and then somebody else moves in and there's like a clash of energy. And I think that's why some of the really good advice for people that are dealing with a home haunting is to fill it with their own energy, to kind of fill that void up, fill that empty space up with music and laughter and fun and just, even home decorating, like filling a space with your own vibe takes away that emptiness.
Kind of like marking your territory spiritually.
Yeah, a little bit. But of course, you can't do that in a hospital or a hotel or a train station. I mean, hotels are really famous for being super haunted as well. And I think one thing that the hotels and hospitals have in common is they do often have quite a lot of empty rooms or empty spaces. Sometimes they have entire closed wings.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I used to work in a hotel and we had, I don't know, maybe 100 rooms. Sometimes it would only be 3 or 4 that were actually being used.
And while those rooms are sitting empty, that's when a lot of experiences happen, isn't it?
And that's kind of when I find the creepiest things happen, when there's nobody there and things are happening. Because again, it's like if you hear it happening, there's people there, you don't notice. When things happen and you expect stuff to be going on, you're not paying attention. But...
No, in fact, we were watching a video with our Sunday bacon sandwiches
Yes.
the other day, and it was somebody that worked, I don't think it was a hospital, it was an old people's home, I think. Was it a care home?
Sure.
I think it was a care home or possibly a hospital. I can't quite recall. But basically they had alarms going off in rooms that were sitting empty. And again, if you're just passing through a hospital or a care home and you hear a room alarm going off, you're not going to think anything of it if the place is full. That's just a normal sound to hear. But of course, these nurses had to respond to the emergency alarm, and they knew that was a room that was sitting empty.
Yeah. And I've had that very experience myself.
You have, haven't you? It was really weird.
I think I've talked about this before.
Years ago.
It was years and years ago. I used to look after empty buildings. Part of my job was to look after properties that had been vacated. And one of the buildings I was looking after was an old people's home. And obviously it was closed, it was secure, it was locked.
And boarded up, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, this was actually in the process of boarding up. Like someone had tried to break in, so I was out there with security having a look, and we were boarding up the window. And we were literally screwing the board into the wall. And as I was doing this, we just heard the buzzer go off and the light flickered on. You could see like the alarm panel at the back of the room, and it just came on and started buzzing. And it was terrifying. It was so strange.
Because presumably, if you were there with security and somebody tried to break in, I'm assuming you'd done like a sweep around the building to make sure there was like nobody on site.
The building was alarmed. Like they didn't even get in because the alarm went off, and we attended and we were securing the building again. And yeah, there was nobody in the building. We'd gone through and checked it. It was all clear. We were looking into the room.
And so was the light that was going off, was that like one of those emergency room alarms?
Yeah.
Like the residents would push if they needed help.
And this was old. It wasn't a fancy new modern one. This was Bakelite buttons on a brushed aluminium panel set into the wall.
Yeah.
Like, it was old. And it had never done it before. And I don't know if it ever did it again, but yeah, it was really creepy. Like, you really had to give it some to get these things to trigger.
Yeah, because the old-fashioned ones you do, it's like a proper switch, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, they probably weren't safe for what they were, because I don't know if everybody that would have been in there would have had the strength to trigger them.
No, because you actually need quite a lot of force and dexterity to be able to press those old-fashioned buttons, don't you? So no, they probably weren't very suitable. But like you say, it was an old building. So
yeah, well, for those of you that were wondering whether it was just like water in the electrics or anything, I actually maintained these buildings, so it was in good condition. This wasn't long after it closed, so this was before we turned the heating off. We had to maintain it until we drained all the system down so it didn't flood or got mouldy and all those sorts of things. So it was in really good condition.
Yeah.
And
so this was not water damage.
It wasn't water damage.
Rat damage or, anything like that.
No, so strange. It really made me jump, and it just made me, the whole place made me feel uneasy.
Yeah.
And there was a few places I had, to be honest, often elderly people's homes that were really creepy. Like, you just felt like something was there.
We went to one, didn't we? I actually managed to have a little tour of one with you. I think we were just both on the way home from work one day, and I think you just had to call in to actually do like a quick site visit or something. And I came in with you, I think just to keep you company, because it was a creepy build. It was genuinely. Yeah. You walked in, and again, it was a different place, but it was another. Used to be an old people's home, closed building, and there was just such an atmosphere there. And as we were walking around and you were doing whatever you needed to do, we heard somebody close the toilet lid. And I was like, okay, well, maybe, I kind of just thought to myself, maybe it was just up and us walking around has, I don't know, jolted the floor, or there's a breeze that we're not aware of and it's shut. But we were walking upstairs, I can remember it quite clearly, and we heard it go again, like somebody had lifted and closed the lid, like lifted and flapped the lid. And I think it happened about 3 times. And by this time I was ready to leave.
Yeah.
Because it was a very distinctive sound.
Yeah. And, again, these places, I looked after these places. They were alarmed. They were patrolled regularly. There was nobody in the building. Like, if somebody got in, the alarm would trigger and we'd know about it. And it wasn't like all of the empty buildings were terrifying. There were so many of them that I had that you'd have looked at them and thought, oh, wow, this looks like it's going to be scary. And I was fine. Like, this is what I did for a living. Like, I was in and out of these buildings all the time, sometimes crazy hours of the night and stuff like that. And I was fine, like, never scared, never even sort of slightly
got the
nervous
hackles,
or anything like that. And yet some buildings didn't matter. It could be height of summer, glorious day.
Well, I think it was this one that we visited that I came to you with. It was the height of summer and it was the middle of a very sunny day. Yeah. But just you walked into that building and there was just an atmosphere.
Yeah, there was some.
I was waiting for something to happen the whole time we were walking around.
There was some that just made me panic. Was that the same one where I did an audio recording?
Yes, that was the same building.
I saw something. I had taken some people around this building. Again, it was an elderly people's home. And they'd gone around the building, and after they'd left, I had to lock everything up. And one of the things I had to do, because it was on a slope, so one of the back doors was on like the 3rd floor of the building, so I had to go and lock that and then come all the way back down, across the whole building. And as I was walking down the corridor, I saw a shadow from one of the rooms just flick past the doorway. And I had to get past to get out. And I'd set an audio recorder because I'd heard so many of these weird things before. I was like, I'm going to catch something. And you can hear me on the recording. And I'm like, dum, 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 dum. Dum, 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 and I literally just sprinted out of the building.
I listened to it.
Terrified.
It was quite funny. Unfortunately, there was no audio, but you didn't experience any audio. It was a visual
I didn't
thing.
hear anything.
But you can hear Fitz's calm, measured footsteps plodding through the building, la 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 la. And there's just this pause and this deadly silence. And obviously, in this silence, Fitz is seeing this person-shaped shadow just move across the doorway. And this place had those long kind of hotel-style corridors. Yeah. So you had lots and lots of doorways either side.
Oh, yeah.
And then after this deadly silence of pause, you just hear as he's running through the building, and you hear him just slamming the door shut and whacking the alarm.
There was nobody in there.
I
did look in the room as I passed. There was nobody in there. Yeah, it was really spooky. Oh, I'm glad that I don't look after that specific building anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so creepy places.
Creepy transient places, liminal places. We love them, but I don't want to be in them after dark.
Well, that, I think, will just about bring us to the end of today's episode and the end of 2025 Spooky Season Shorts. Thank you so much to all of our listeners who made this series possible by sharing their true paranormal experiences with us. We are so grateful and honoured to be entrusted with your stories. And if you've got your own spooky experience to share, we would absolutely love to hear it. So please do get in touch with us over on our website at knockOncevs.com.
And if you want more content from us, we do have some fun extras over on our Patreon. We've got some road trip vlogs, we've got articles, photo albums, bonus episodes. We've recently put out a little vlog that is actually a sneak peek of the location for the next paranormal postcard, which will be out in only a week or so. We're also in the middle of putting together a kind of just a fun Halloween video. We're waiting on the postman to bring us a few more items before we can finish that off. But all of our digital bonus content over on Patreon is available for only $1 a month. That's the lowest we can set it. We do understand that everybody is feeling the squeeze at the moment. Economic times are not great. So we do try and make it as cheap and as accessible as we possibly can. So yeah, from as little as $1 a month, you get access to all our digital bonus content. And if you're in the UK, that's about 70p. And all those 70p's really, really do help us a massive amount.
And if you want a free way to help support us, we have loved hearing from you guys. So we'd love some more comments on our YouTube episodes. If you have 5 minutes, pop over, tell us about your Halloween plans, let us know what costumes you're planning, what your fave Halloween recipes are, how much new homeware have you bought whilst the shops are full of spooky themed cookware.
Is everybody else like me and saves up a year's worth of home decor shopping for October?
Let us know. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to join us for our full-sized Hallowbirthdayween episode at the end of the month and help us celebrate 9 years of podcasting with more spooks, more stories, and a liberal dose of seasonal silliness on the next Knock Once for Yes.
Give me peace,